Hello everyone, my name is Surina. I am the Employer and Alumni Liaison from the Career Center, and I will be your moderator this afternoon. Thank you so much to Lucy and Rhonda for your opening remarks, and thank you so much to our panelists for being here today. I would like to ask our panelists to please begin by briefly introducing themselves, telling us a little bit about their roles and about the department that they work in within the federal government.
So my name is Taki Sarantakis. I am the president of the Canada School of Public Service, which is a relatively small organization in the government of Canada. We are about 600 people. But more importantly for you, I'm actually 30 years ago, I was on the other side of this table. I started at York University in 1988. I spent 5 wonderful years here as an undergraduate, and then I did my master's degree at York University in political science. And then after that, I went down the street to the University of Toronto for most of the PhD. And like many people in the government of Canada, I ended up in the government of Canada a little bit by accident. There's not a lot of people that grow up wanting to be bureaucrats, and there's not a lot of people that grow up wanting to be civil servants. But there are a lot of people like you who grow up wanting to make a difference. There are people who grow up and want to work in engineering, or in healthcare, or in public policy, or even representing your country abroad. So there are an inordinate number of opportunities in the government of Canada. The government of Canada is actually the largest employer in the country. Depending on how you count, whether it's kind of the core public service or the broader public service, it's between 250,000 and 500,000 people. So as the largest employer in Canada, you can imagine that there are almost an infinite variety of opportunities for you, whether you're interested in science, whether you're interested in research, whether you're interested in healthcare, whether you're interested in finance, human resources. As a very large corporate entity, it is a remarkable place for you to get not only the skills that you have been developing here over the course of your time as students, but also an opportunity for you to kind of showcase a multiplicity of talents. So the kind of talents that the government of Canada looks for are at the entry level, are very much the things that you're doing now. Learning how to communicate, and you've been learning how to communicate through writing essays, and condensing a lot of complicated information into very short, succinct notes or papers. We call them briefing notes, you call them essays or papers. You give presentations. Everybody on this panel gives presentations all the time. And in fact, were they not good at giving presentations, they wouldn't have gotten to where they were in their careers. Everybody at this table is very good at kind of managing their time, managing their resources. Before I served as a university student, I certainly did not know how to manage my time. I did not know how to balance the essays versus the exams versus when to be in class, when to be in class, which class you had to go to until you kind of figured things out. So a lot of the skills that you're learning are actually life skills. Don't think of them as skills that you're learning in university and then you will abandon. These are actually, a lot of these skills are skills that you're going to, rather than abandon, you're going to deepen them. So today, you have a very small representation. We only have 3 departments and agencies with us today. We have Canada School, we have Treasury Board Secretariat, which is a central agency, and then we have one of our regional development offices, the Southern Ontario Development Agency. We have a Canada institution that we'll be spending some time with you later today. But beyond that, there are careers, again, in the foreign service, there are careers in public safety, there are careers in CSIS, there are careers in Health Canada, again, almost an infinite variety of careers. And what we're really looking for at the entry level are the basic fundamental skills. Can you communicate? Are you a good thinker? Can you synthesize information? Do you play well with others? Do you work hard? Do you have a spark? So yes, the things that you're studying, whether they're political science or economics or health, or whatever the case may be. Those are all really important to give you a foundation and a discipline. But the other skills that you're learning along the way that sometimes you don't even recognize you're learning, those are the skills that are really going to make or break you as you go forward, not only potentially in the government of Canada, but anywhere in the job. Before I hand over the microphone to Joanne to go down, I would just like to thank Rhonda, Dean of the University, for putting these together. 30 years ago when I was here, events like this were very rare, and today it's a much different world. I got into government in Canada very much by accident, very much by happenstance. When we were paying tuition, tuition was something you could make, you could earn in the summer, or maybe in 6 months. That's not true for you. So at the end of the pipeline, it is very, very important for you to get a good, well-paid job. Probably more so than it was for us, who had a few more So with that, it's our pleasure to be here.
So I am the head of HR, the Chief Security Officer, and the head of real property for the Canada School of Public Service. So essentially, I'm Director General of Workforce and Workplace, and that means that I'm responsible for people, everything related to our workforce, and also everything related to accommodations and property security. It's a very exciting job. There's never a dull day. There's never a day where I come in and the day I planned turns out to be that way. And so my career has been very interesting where my parents were public servants, and I once said I would never be a public servant. And that's one of the things I've learned is never say never. You never know where your career will take you. One of the things that's really interesting is that I did apply to be a student in the Government of Canada. I was going to be an accountant, I was going to own my own business, and I was going to travel the world and have a global business. That was my career goal. I started in the public service as a student, hopeful to work at Revenue, where I started, and jumpstart my work experience so that it would get me my CMA faster. Well, at the time, the public service wasn't as good in HR at placing people in jobs for which their studies aligned. So due to my brother's comment about me, and he told the lady in HR, he said, my sister would be great in HR. So they took the lady, the girl, that was studying accounting, and they put me in HR. And I was fuming for about 2 months, telling my brother, how could you not consult me before you made a recommendation about my job? And well, let me tell you, I also learned that you have to be really nice to your siblings. And I thank my brother every single time I see him, because his statement and this very chance conversation putting me in HR had me fall in love with HR. And I changed all of my studies halfway through, and so I have all these accounting courses, and then I finished with an HR degree. So you never know if you're setting yourself on a path. The other thing I learned is you have to keep an open mind, because you never really know what job, what statement, what chance interaction with someone may actually direct your future. So that's been very interesting for me. I say that all the time that my student job is now 28 years old. It just is a student job that just keeps on going for me, and I love every day of it. I think that as a public servant, the thing that most really touches me is that I feel that I have impact and influence every day at making government and the economy and frankly the country better for Canadians overall. And so in public service, regardless of your role, you have huge impact and influence, both nationally and globally. And I've had the fortunate experience of working in 4 very interesting and diverse departments. The first one was revenue, because I was going to be an accountant. I was there 16 years, and it is a phenomenal organization. I always say that every public servant should work there to be reminded that every dollar we spend is Canadian taxpayer dollars. Very professional organization, direct impact on our economy. I worked at the Public Service Commission. That was a great gig as well. If you recall, I told you I started as a student, and in my career, I ended up being the lead executive responsible for all recruitment for the Government of Canada. And that was one of the funnest jobs, meeting with universities and students on a regular basis. Then my career led me to the Canada Border Services Agency, a public safety organization that's 24/7, and where terrorism is the #1 threat to the organization. That's a whole other eye-opener. After I worked there for a little while, friends would ask me, how do you feel about traveling now? And it was phenomenal to see the scientists that work there, the border service officers, the research that goes on, and again, that touch Canadians on a regular basis. And now, in the last 4 years, I've been at the Canada School of Public Service on the learning side, and now head of HR, real property and security. Very dynamic, small organization. We're very nimble. And I want to tell you that I've had 4 departments so far in my career. There are over 100 departments and agencies, and as Taki was saying, anywhere between 250,000 jobs to 500,000. And so the variety is phenomenal, and I would encourage you to really look at government and keep an open mind, because a career is incremental and the opportunities are exponential.
My name is Milito, and I am the Assistant Comptroller General for Internal Audit in the Government of Canada. As you can imagine, when I go to social events and I mention this title to people, I get one of 3 reactions. They either look confused, they look at their shoes awkwardly, or they pretend somebody is calling them and walk away. But internal audit is actually quite misunderstood, and maybe later during the mix and mingle or later in this panel I can tell you a bit about what that is. But really, the branch that I'm in charge of is one of several within the Treasury Board Secretariat, which is a central agency in the Government of Canada that focuses on instilling good management across government. And in my case, it's around the internal audit function. And in short, what we do is our 600 auditors across government, across different departments, advise their deputy ministers, the heads of those organizations, about issues around risk and control. How much control should you have around the risks that could affect your success? A lot of us also manage evaluation, which is where you get into program evaluation to see whether programs are relevant and whether they meet the needs of Canadians and whether they're meeting their desired outcomes. Or sometimes you find undesirable outcomes that come out of those programs. So very fascinating, and in fact I spent most of my career dabbling in those one or both of those fields. So I'm actually at the point now where in my career where I'm privileged to be in a central agency where I can have an influence across government. So every large department and agency has its own operation, just like it has its own CFO, etc. And so I'm in charge of managing the health of that community of 600 plus auditors. We also set the rules for the Government of Canada's auditing functions against international standards, but we also have our own special rules for audit. We also do something different, some of you might be aware, to add transparency and strengthen our oversight. We added external boards, they're called external audit committees, that advise deputy ministers such as Taki and James about their management issues. And so we recruit and from the outside, so we bring in high-flying CEOs and academics to come in and they advise deputies. So my unit is in charge of bringing in people who are diverse, qualified, reflect Canada's population. And we also do audits. So even though every large department has their own audit function that looks into things like IT and human resource planning and all of that, we also do audits that cut across the entire government on similar topics. We're doing one now on IT security, which as you can imagine is pretty complex and very important. Project management, we're going and looking at the digital space and how we're going to look at AI and responsible use of AI down the road. So we're doing some cool things.
So hi there, my name is Alix Dostal. So like Mike, I'm also with the Treasury Board Secretariat, but I work in a different area. So I am the Executive Director of the International Affairs and Justice Division. So we are an interesting part of Treasury Board. All parts of Treasury Board are interesting, but our job is to actually make recommendations to cabinet ministers, to a cabinet committee called the Treasury Board, on issues related to how the government spends money, programs and services.
So on a very regular basis, we get to think about issues that touch all Canadians. Our particular area that my team deals with is international affairs and justice. So on a daily basis, I get to think about international trade. I get to think about foreign affairs. And it's a really privileged position that we're in to get to think about these things on a day-to-day basis with always a view to how are we helping Canadians? And that's a pretty invigorating reason to go to work every day. I manage a team of analysts, and what's interesting is some of my analysts are people that were in positions like you are, sitting in audiences as students just a couple of years ago. And I want to reflect on something Taki said a few minutes ago, and that is really about the things that you guys can bring to the table as public servants, even when you're early on in your career. As I say, we have a whole suite of analysts, junior, senior, but all of them bring very different and interesting and helpful things to the table. So just one anecdote, which is we have a recruitment program in our department that we'll probably talk about in a few minutes, and we brought in some new analysts, and the new analysts come in, and all of the things they learned in school, so there's great writing skills, analytical skills, creativity, all of that stuff, they're able to bring and apply directly into their work every day. So what I love about it is the energy, enthusiasm they bring in invigorates me. And they also teach me a ton of stuff because, I'm sort of the grizzled public servant who's been in the public service for quite a while, but they come in with these new ideas and they're able to ask the questions that we might have forgotten to ask or don't ask anymore to help really bring different perspectives, which ultimately help us give better advice to ministers that we're serving, which is really why we're there. So I just wanted to, emphasize that lots to contribute, many places in government. We will talk probably in a few minutes about sort of how we got to where we are now, and my road, as I'll tell you a little bit later, was not a little bit circuitous. I was actually in Toronto for a number of years as a private sector lawyer and then made the big jump.
I'm a Deputy Minister over the President of FedDev Ontario, which is the Regional Economic Development Agency for Southern Ontario. There are 6 regional development agencies at the federal level that span the entire country, from the west to the Maritimes to Quebec, Southern Ontario, Northern Ontario, and the north. Essentially what we do is we try to provide patient capital, zero interest loans, essentially, to rapidly growing companies in the Southern Ontario economy. In addition, we provide investments in support of what we call the innovation ecosystem, which would include partnerships with accelerated incubators, of which there are 100 in Southern Ontario, also partnering with post-secondary institutions and other players to generate the supports required to drive startups and support startups and enter them into the economy. And then we find other ways to pick them up and accelerate their growth. The challenge being, we think we have no problem in creating startups in Canada, but we have a real problem in keeping and maintaining companies of medium to large scale. So that's what the policy objective is. We do a bunch of other things too, so you may have seen the Women Entrepreneurship Strategy that was recently announced by the federal government, which is specific support to encourage and drive the numbers of women-led entrepreneurs and companies. We also have a mandate around inclusive growth under the new Liberal government, which is to look for ways to support SME growth across underrepresented groups. And very much our investments go into the space of technology adoption, digital transition, all of what's required for companies to participate in the new production of the innovation economy. So it's fascinating work. We're very small. We're about an organization of around about 250 people. We have locations in Waterloo, in Toronto, in Ottawa, and in Peterborough. The types of people that we look to hire who work inside this very specialized agency of the federal government are people with obviously commerce skills, finance skills. We look for lots of MBAs, MPAs, public administration. And then there are the core corporate functions too of an independent agency around HR and finance and communications. So it's a big range of skill sets, not limited to undergrad, but very interested in PhDs. We have lots of PhDs in the economic analysis section of this agency, as well as the more traditional commerce and master's degrees, MPAs, MBAs are highly valuable and highly sought after. So that's what the agency does. I am good, grizzled, old public servants, aren't they? That's why I'm on the end of this bench. So I graduated in 1936. I've been in the federal public service for 28 years. I actually started at the age of 30 in the federal public service. Prior to that, I was a teacher. I grew up in the UK, was teaching in the UK. I came to Canada essentially because I got a job as a teacher in a ski school north of Montreal, and I was a terrible skier, so I didn't know what else to do after that. And I went back to school and did a master's degree in Montreal, ran out of money, was about to go back home, embarrassed, and trying to hit my mother up for some more financial support. Or I spoke to this prof and said, this is brutal, I really can't feed myself. And he said, well, you should go to Ottawa, and they will give you a salary, and we will count those credits to your master's degree. So that's why I ended up in the public service.
I would like to ask our panelists just to tell our audience a little bit about what are some of the types of employment opportunities that you currently have available within your departments for current students or new graduates.
I mean, we are probably, in a small agency, turnover in hiring is probably around about 25 a year, and it can be across all of those functions. But we are, at the same time, we made a big commitment in the last 2 years or so to drive up the experience that students can have in our agency before any decision is taken about permanent hiring. So we've moved those numbers up. We would probably take anywhere between 30 to 40 students a year for some form of a work experience inside the agency, whether it's a summer placement, whether it's a co-op opportunity. We like listening to industry, which we do all the time. The notion of students that have had co-op experiences in their education is highly valued in all industries and sectors of the economy. And we would say it's the same thing for us. We find co-op students actually that have had an experience in co-op, either in a number of provincial or federal departments, know what they're actually getting into when the decision comes of whether they want to make that at least a first start in that career or even a permanent career. So that would be it, and the method by which we do it is pretty straightforward. When it comes down to a permanent hiring, we really our default is the bridging program. It's the easiest by far way that you can get a job in the federal public service. The mere fact that as you close out your education, you are automatically able to be considered and jump ahead of massive lines of applications coming from people who are separated between their work experience and their education. Any job posted in the public service, certainly in the area that I'm in, we would have thousands of applications. So if you were forced to participate in that mix, I think you would find it quite difficult to get your experience quickly to the top. And so the bridging program is by far the most efficient and effective way to get into the agency.
So at Treasury Board Secretariat, we actually hire students in a whole broad range of areas. In fact, we hire about 180 students in the department each year. We have students that we hire in IT, we have roles in communications, evaluation and audit. I won't steal Mike's thunder on that. Policy, regulatory policy oversight, financial management, people management, so a whole different range of areas. We've already talked a little bit about coming in as a summer student, so that's certainly, so students are certainly something we hire. But another program I will highlight to you is through our department, we actually have a recruitment program for policy and program analysts. So this is an annual program that brings in entry-level analysts who completed a master's or a law degree in several different disciplines such as public administration, economics, international affairs, Indigenous studies, Masters of Business Administration. So this is a great way to come into the department, and there you can get hired sort of full-time into the department through that and again, we have an annual recruitment for that.
So yeah, we do hire a fair number of FSWEP and co-op students, for sure, and yes, bridging, that should be your best friend, one of your favorite words, because it is super easy for managers, so if you fit in and you show potential, you have a really good chance of getting it, because it is that easy. A little bit more about TBS, so Treasury Board Secretariat. It's small but mighty and diverse. So my high school was 2,000 people. TBS is about between 1,800 and 2,000 people. But the influence it has across government is unbelievable. So in terms of opportunities, like business majors, but people from different political science, arts, whatever. If you're a critical thinker, good communicator, work horizontally in teams, that's what it's about these days. We want to talk to you. And so even though it's small, in addition to Alix's group and other groups like hers that deal with departments, they call program analysts, and we deal with the issues Alix mentioned, there's also, we run pensions and benefits, giant programs for public service, there's collective bargaining, there's all the enabling functions that you would need in a large department. There's people who develop management policies that touch, that tries to govern the hundreds of thousands of public servants. So that's the kind of stuff that you could be working on or with others who do that at TPS. So I think we mentioned some of the, if you're in fourth year or in graduate studies and you're looking for that permanent job, there's various ones there for comms and for HR and for other things, economics. The one that's close to my heart is the one on audits. It's called the IART program, Internal Audit Recruitment Development Program. And one of the problems, I've only been in my job for about a year, and one of the things I've noticed, we don't brand it very well. So people just think, oh, audit's not for me because it's just a bunch of accountants. And yes, there are a lot of accountants who work in audit, a lot of business majors. But our vision for internal audit is if we have to chase down what the risks are to protect and to advise our deputy ministers, well, risks aren't just financial. And so we need people from library sciences, journalism, arts, engineers, math. We're big on data analytics. We're getting into AI, machine learning. We need to understand the complexities so that we can do the audits using modern techniques. Work with consultants who are also leading edge, and then provide that advice at the line. So all this to say, one takeaway I want to give to you before I pass the mic over is on the IART program, don't just write it off. Take a look at it. Just ask for a degree. And then maybe you can ask questions about what that function is. And I would imagine that other functions are similar. So don't just write off the federal government thinking, I never wanted to necessarily work in the federal government. Give us a chance to see what's out there. You can work at the Space Agency, or you can work at Finance Canada, pretty diverse. But also within the functions themselves, whether it's HR, whether it's finance or internal audit, chances are there's some multidisciplinary aspects of that, and maybe your degree is quite relevant to those functions.
And public service has many really great recruitment programs. Co-op is a beautiful door to come in through. You get to try us, we get to try you. And Co-op is the fastest growing program in the Government of Canada, and so I would really encourage you to look at it. There's also the Federal Student Work Employment Program. 10,000 students every year are recruited through there. The Research Affiliate Program as well. So any program of study that has a research component, the folks can apply to the Research Affiliate Program. It's the least known program, and it's a really good one. There's recruitment of policy leaders. We've hired some deputy ministers through that program. And so it's an excellent program, so I invite you to look at jobs.gc.ca. And frankly, I would encourage you to create an account and look at the website and every single day. The public service, the size that we are, we post opportunities daily, and you should be, through your job search, looking at those on a regular basis.
Unlike any other company that would be here before you today, we're constantly hiring for everything, every single day. And so one of the mistakes that people make is they look at particular jobs for the Government of Canada and they say, well, I'm not really sure if I'm particularly interested in spending the rest of my life as a policy person in the Department of Transport or as a biologist in the Department of Natural Resources. It is inordinately rare for anybody in the Government of Canada to spend the vast majority of their time in one department. In fact, most people, before they retire, will have 4, 5, 6 different experiences in different departments. So in a way, you actually get to reinvent yourself over and over again. You can spend a few years working in audit and evaluation, then you can actually go on a posting abroad, and then when you come back from your posting abroad, you can actually work in intelligence and security. And then after that, you might want to work in service delivery jobs. So the Government of Canada isn't so much about what job is open today and who's hiring today. It's really about starting a career that would have a multiplicity of facets and potentially 3, 4, 5 different careers. So as Joanne says, I would encourage you not so much to focus on a particular job, but look at different programs. And once you're in the Government of Canada, it's very difficult to get in the Government of Canada, but once you get into the Government of Canada, the capacity for you to move around within the Government of Canada is extraordinary. So your biggest single hurdle is actually getting through the front door. once you get through the front door, you don't have a job, you have a career.
Lots and lots of programs, lots and lots of ways to enter the federal government, which is amazing. And I think there's just a couple of points that I wanted to highlight as well based on what our panelists said. One of the things that we hear all the time is, especially when it comes to co-ops, summer internships with the federal government, students tend to get intimidated when they hear that there's thousands of applications, right? There's so many candidates. And I think that it's important to note that someone's going to get chosen. So you need to apply, you need to look at these postings and really evaluate them, not just the job title, but read through it, because many times it's not a specific degree that they're looking for, it's specific skill sets, and depending on what your skill sets are, depending on what your program is, it might be a great fit for you. It's just a matter of being able to market it that way. So thank you so much for that information. For our next question, I wanted to go a little bit into the application process. So thinking back to candidates that you have come across, what would you say has distinguished those candidates or applicants that have been successful throughout all the various stages of the recruitment process, and what essentially made them successful?
At entry level, we really look a lot more at potential than we do experience. It's not very interesting to ask somebody who's never held a full-time job, what kind of experience do you bring to the table? In fact, it's kind of silly, and so good organizations actually kind of project what you can do based on things like your transcripts, based on things like talking to your professors, based on things like how do you answer different questions, sometimes questions that are complete opposites within a 3-4 minute interview or a 10-minute interview. Very elemental things as well, like if you are sending a resume that's full of typos, if you're sending a resume that doesn't have complete sentences, not too many people are going to look at you, because that says a lot about you. It says that you don't really pay attention to details, you don't really think it's important that you present yourself properly. So don't kind of screen yourself out, so to speak, by doing things like that. Show that you are professional, show that you are reliable, show that you demonstrate good judgment. And then through a lot of the programs that we talked about, once you get in those programs, it's very important to do the fundamentals, to say, how can I help when you're at work? To say, what else can I do? Where else can I learn? Where can I grow? Because that's another filter. So the first kind of filter is getting in the door, and then the second kind of filter is, well, you're kind of on probation. Am I going to keep you? Am I not going to keep you? And the people that are kept are those that show a capacity to continue to grow. And because again, we're not so much hiring an entry-level analyst or an entry-level lab technician or a junior financial analyst. We're actually looking to, over the course of 20 years or 30 years, does this person have the potential to enter senior management? Does this person have the potential to lead a team? Does this person have the skills to solve problems? So again, I keep coming back to the generic transferable skills as opposed to, I am the best biologist in the history of the world. Because if you want to be the best biologist in the history of the world, there's maybe one job available.
Things that really strike me when I meet someone is attitude. I want to see a positive, can-do, solutions person. And experience is learned, and knowledge also can be learned. But your personality and your attitude is something that matters every single day. And when we do references on folks that don't have a lot of experience, we want to know about your character references. What do your colleagues at school say about you? What does your family say about you? Those are things that you should be thinking of as you start to build your career. Is what is the image that you're portraying? Are you a hard worker? Are you conscientious? Spelling mistakes on a CV are glaring lights for us of someone that's not conscientious. And we were joking actually about autocorrect earlier today, and about being very careful about that function. Reread your CVs. Make sure that everything is factually correct, and be humble. Be honest, but be humble. Sometimes when you get CVs that are just go on and on with information, well, if someone is too long-winded and verbose, well, what is it that they're trying to tell you, and that they have to hide behind, 12 paragraphs to tell you something very minor? So be direct, be clear, be honest, And when we meet with you in person, we're looking at your nonverbal as much as we're looking at the verbal. So your interpersonal skills of how you carry yourselves, eye contact, and just being engaging. And humility is also a very important quality. Much as we may all aspire to be a CEO someday, the NHLers don't start right at the NHL. They start in the minors. And so careers are incremental and you build them. And every single interaction you have is important. So even if you have an interview and you don't get that job, the people that interviewed you will remember you. And though you may not be a fit for that job, if I'm speaking to Mike, I may say, oh, I didn't hire Susie for this job, but boy, do I ever think she would be great for your area. And so every interaction is important. And so bring your full best self to each interview.
I guess I'll just add on the application part, one of the things that frustrates us when we get applications and we even know in the sense you have the experience, but if you didn't address it in the application, you get screened out. So you have to be really, really detailed on that front. If we ask for, demonstrate X, Y, Z, really make sure that that's clearly identified so that somebody can actually assess. That's the first step, is to get screened into exams or into the interview process and get past the application. And sadly, that is one of the biggest things. So just double, triple check the requirements, not just the spelling, but what you actually addressed and map it out. In terms of the interviews, in addition to what was said, I look for people who are engaging. They're genuine. You can tell when someone's giving you rote memorization answers. They tend to look up, and the best one, I remember somebody go, oh yeah, I remember this one. And you could see them. They were going through the checklist in their mind. They were actually saying it out loud. I couldn't believe it. So that person did a good job. But so you have to be engaging and just, yes, you have to study. We know that. Don't advertise that sometimes you're pulling from your studies. But really be yourself and show that interest, be present. I call that being compelling. Also, managing your time is important, but you also don't want to go the other way around. Once Taki and I interviewed somebody a number of months ago, we ended up calling him the clock guy because he was so obsessed with the time. So you have to just relax and address the questions and make sure they're addressed fully. Again, interviewers are looking for, did you address the question without delving into minute detail? And I would say, yes, we do talk even about people who didn't succeed. Sometimes we do refer. I would also encourage you to ask for feedback at the end of a process. And the worst that somebody could say is no, because we're not offering that. But I think most of the time, somebody will offer you feedback. You'll learn. But also, people do get impressed by that. I've actually hired people in other processes who came for feedback because they showed demonstration to learn, and they actually did learn from that. So just a few tidbits there.
If you do get hired in the public service, how to sort of make your mark once you're there is to be interested and engaged, right? It is a really big privilege to work in the public service, and I think we all feel this every day when we go to work. And so we hope if you come to join us that you would feel that sense of pride too, and be interested. It is an opportunity. You can learn about so many different things. So ask questions, be engaged, and show that to the people you work with. So that was kind of one thing I wanted to say. And then the second sort of broader tip too is about the importance of interpersonal skills in every facet of your life. So this is in the interview stage, but when you get there too, certainly people want to work with people they want to work with, right? And more public servants, it's really important for us to be not only engaging with ourselves, but also with Canadians and with other people outside the public service. So when we think about the next generation of public servants that come behind us, we want to think, who are those people who can be emissaries for the public service outside with Canadians and with others? So that's really important. I did want to give one additional, I'll call it sort of a bit of a pro tip in terms of how to think about interviews. One thing that sort of sometimes knocks people off their feet that I see more often than I would have thought I would have seen is people answering a question other than the question asked. And it sounds kind of like an obvious thing, but it's actually not. And I've actually made that mistake before, where someone might ask a theoretical question about, pretend X, Y, Z happened to you, what would you do? And you go, okay, thanks for that question, but actually I'm going to tell you about something that did happen to me. You haven't answered the question, and so as managers, when we're sitting there, looking who to hire, that's an issue for us. So think carefully about the question and try to be careful about answering the question asked. And then the second sort of interview pro tip I guess I would give, and I think people have alluded to it on the panel already, is try to be organized in your answer. Often, and I'm certainly prone to this, is you have all these ideas in your mind, you want to just get them all out there and show how much you know and how enthusiastic you are. But think about how you're going to answer the question, because what you'll see, particularly in the public service, is the managers are furiously writing down all the answers. And so if you're organized and clear, it actually makes it a lot easier, and you get your message across much more clearly.
I mean, I think you should practice. Like, you should actually take the time to practice what it is that you believe and try and anticipate the types of questions you're going to be asked. Practice in front of someone that you trust, right? What you think you have in your head comes out very differently when you say it. So that would be the smart thing to do. Those who have been at co-ops and distinguished themselves on co-ops are the people that we want to hire. So it is a laboratory experiment in a sense. And we watch them not just for their, we assume they have the foundational skills, or if it's a technical job, they have to be demonstrated by the education levels they've achieved. The things that start to distinguish co-op students in the workplace are the soft skills, right? Which is, there's some other things. Like, obviously, if you're a policy analyst, you need to have demonstrated extremely strong analytical and writing skills. If you're in program delivery or in an area of that space, you need to be exceptional in working in teams and collaboration. When you work in a team, you've all done it. There are always people who just want to hug the limelight and make the noise, versus those who are actually being a productive team member, which means finding a space where you can actually make some value-added contribution. The others that distinguish themselves in our agency are those that actually, we get many that come who just given a certain job and they sit in the cubicle and they type away and they do beautiful analytic reports and they don't really talk to anybody, they do that, they bang that stuff out excellently, and then they go. So really they've been doing the job we've asked them to do. But what we notice is those that actually are showing inquisitiveness, right? An interest. Talking to people who've actually done that job for 5, 10, maybe sometimes 15 years. Talking to managers, talking about what is this agency really trying to deliver. Showing an interest in the impact and the outcomes of the work of the agency. And people very, very quickly distinguish themselves. And what is driven by that, not only inquisitiveness, but there's also a sense that they're clearly interested in the work. Now, this all sounds like if you're not perfect as you go forward, it's a complete disaster, don't try. Like, listen, the last thing that someone said down the line that they would like to do references with their university colleagues or down with your family. Like, I would never have a job in the public service. Absolutely, that's horrendous. So don't panic about it, but just sit back a little bit and just try and think, well, what are these people trying to do? They're sitting in front of sometimes hundreds of applications. They're doing maybe 20 interviews. They're trying to find, you know, the star candidate as best as they can understand and do so. It's not an exact science. So some of the, I've been interviewed inside the public service where I didn't get the job. Quite a few actually. But you know, just keep going, find a way. Eventually you find an interconnection, you'll relate, you'll find something you like, and you just be natural and be yourself. The worst thing you can try and do is pretend to be the Nobel physicist when, or whatever it is, the world's greatest communicator, if that's not your strength. And then the other thing, we absolutely recognize that this is entry into the public service. So as an employer, we have an obligation to train you and support you and grow your talent. So we're not expecting that we arrive on day one being ready to be a deputy minister. It's a long training process. And one of amassing some considerable experience testing in a variety of scenarios and areas. So just be relaxed, be clear, absolutely be courteous, make sure that you present something that is not slipshod. Find out about the organization. People who come forward and have no idea what the actual particular employer inside the public service is hiring for are just dead in the water. And that is really a lack of courtesy. Now I have 2 kids in university right now, right? And one is actually kind of co-op. And I actually said, well, can I see your CV before you send it? You know, I got my son, right? So, and I was horrified by the spelling mistakes. So then I was like, look, like that really, if that came to me, it wouldn't even get to me. It wouldn't even get past basic administration in the HR area. So that is a barrier, right? So if you really want to do it, step back, get somebody else to look at it. Does it make sense? Sometimes when you've read something 36 times, you stop seeing the error that's evident to somebody who reads it for the first time. So be professional, but be relaxed, be yourself, be inquisitive, answer. If you don't know the answer, it's totally fine at entry level. Don't bullshit, don't make it up, don't exaggerate, and make sure if you give a reference, that they know that you've given their name. I've had people who've given references, and we've called them, and the referee goes, oh my God, I would never put that person in charge of my children, never mind hire them in, whatever, right? So make sure, check the person you're going to give as a reference is actually a fan of yours, is prepared to stand up. Sometimes ask them what they would say about it, because you want to get into it, because they may be just being pleasant and nice, but actually they know nothing about you in terms of what the interest is or what the job is. Those are the smart ones.
We talked a lot about marketing tools and ensuring that things are spelled correctly, the right information is provided on there. Please remember that as current students and alumni, after 2 years after graduation, you are able to visit the Career Center, get assistance, whether it be through a group workshop, one-on-one appointments, even some online resources that are there to help you not only fix up your resume, customize your resume, review job postings, and make sure that the right information that you want targeted on that is there. We also provide mock interviews, so if you are a little nervous about your interview skills, that help is also provided. Other things that you mentioned as well that I think were great points were references. I think it's so important to not only start making the connections with individuals that are within your circle, with new connections, new professional networks, and I love the fact that you mentioned to let your references know when you are about to use them. I also think it's really great to note that if you are going to be using references and you do let them know that you're using them, share the job posting with them. Let them know what you're applying for, so when they are going to be saying great things about you, they can also customize what they're saying to ensure that they're showing that you're a good fit for that position. So lots of resources available, but if you are nervous, if you feel like you just need a little bit more assistance, please use the free resources that are available to you.
Thank you for speaking. It's just a general question. So you talked a lot about positions for undergrads and PhDs and whatnot, relatively young. What about for people who are like in a career change, for example, who are looking to work experience and now they're back in school and now they're looking to get into the public sector? Are there opportunities? What have your comments on that? Great.
Well, I can be quick, but then I'll pass it to people with more expertise. But people who are coming in mid-career or more mature are less risk for us. In fact, the average age, I think, of the people who enter into my agency is probably 30 to 32. Because we're going to look for people who've probably been in the banking sector for a while, or they've been into sort of have some promotional experience. The other thing on that is that actually is probably on the product. I think it's, I think the statistic I had is that there are 9,000 people leaving the public service every year. So it's a mix of the types of people who fill those positions. Many will be at the entry level, with people bridging out of university. But there are many other hires too for people who are mid-career. And you have different expectations of those people when you return. So yes, I mean, we're in the talent attraction game, and age in some senses is really immaterial.
Just to build on that, I actually came into the public service. I was a lawyer in the private sector, as I mentioned, for a number of years. And then I applied to a program, and I think it was already mentioned earlier, called the Recruitment of Policy Leaders. So this, again, was a program that I was able to tap into when I sort of wanted to do a career shift. So that when I came into the public service, I actually didn't do law and moved into a number of different areas. So I think, just to reinforce the point, I think mid-career, the idea of bringing people who have other experiences outside is really valuable. So definitely don't have the fact of having a career change is a deterrent to come to the public service. In fact, I think it's a really big benefit.
I guess the way to get in, I mean, there's programs you can apply to. They may take a bit longer, but I think it's worth applying. I think more lines in the water that you have, the better. There's also job postings that are open to others, and some of them do ask for more experience, whether it's in the audit field, finance, or what have you. And I would say, this is where the last piece is more about leveraging your contacts. Whether you're a student coming out of university and you don't have a placement yet, or whether you're mid-career, networking and all of that plays a huge role. If you have a network and you can kind of send some emails in, or meet people at an event, whether it's an HR event or a finance event or what have you, you can land things called casual term. So you can get a term appointment or a casual appointment, which are lower risk for managers. There's tight rules around them, but at the same time they're easy to put in place. You just can't use them. So if you're lucky enough to, for example, get a casual, which means you have 90 days to kind of work on a certain assignment for a department, then if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But you've got some experience, you know the system a little bit more, you have something on your resume, and even if they can't hire you because there's a 90-day limit, you can be hired by a different department. So there are ways to do that. So I would leverage all of them, the formal programs, you know, and the informal through networking, and try to get that casual or that term where low risk for managers and pools, they're more likely to take a chance on.
We don't recruit only at the entry level, and so it's important to know that we recruit at all levels. Middle managers, senior analysts, all levels of government. We often go external for heads of organizations, and so jobs.gc.ca is key because it has everything there. It has student programs, it has all different programs where you don't necessarily need to be in school to apply. So really have a look at that. That's really your starting point for all levels, and it's really extraordinary to see the opportunities that are there. So I'd invite you to look at that frequently.